Next step. First key I made here, the C key, is pretty close to the key it has to operate. I'm a little concerned about this gap here. It's a little bit larger than I want. Yeah, it'll work. Aesthetically, this is similar distance here as this is here, but I want this to be closer to the key it's going to operate, so when I make my little appendages to drive the key, I don't have to make 3 different ones. I can make them all the same. So I'm going to show you how to do this without adding any material, without taking anything apart, and the hint is, look at the thickness here. We're going to deal with that at the same time, somewhat. Okay, so what I'm going to do to lengthen this key is forge it. Originally, I was planning on forging all of these keys, and that would have been my preferred way to do it, but the problem was this part here. I would be good up to about here, and then getting this to turn 90 degrees and have this accurately, it just wasn't going to work. So I decided soldering the individual pieces together was the better way to go. So when you're forging, you are getting deformation of the metal, and that metal has to go someplace. So generally it's going to spread evenly, but because we have a fixed point here at the hinge, that's not going to change, so the relative movement is going to be in the direction that we want to take up space. So the only thing that you really need to be careful of with such work is messing up all of the angles and curves and things that you have. So you have to be really mindful of that. Check your work frequently. I'm going to give this a few more whacks and then see how much it's moved. Okay, so I just ran over and measured that, put that on to see how far it moved, and it moved about maybe a fifth of the distance I need it to go. So I decided I should actually take a measurement so I'm not running back and forth, and the distance on the flute from the hinge to the key that this has to actuate is almost exactly 3 inches. So I'm going to use that as my target, and then that leaves room for sanding and tweaking and stuff for final fit. As you can see, this is starting to bend from the hammering, so that's something that I will have to deal with. I'll need to get a narrower block to get in there and tap that back down flat. And that's another thing to pay attention to. I have a hinge hole here. It's very close to the edge, so if I get a bow in this direction and I rest that hinge, that point right on the edge, I could crack that or very easily squash it, that hole. So these are things you want to pay attention to when you're forging. And I'm rolling it back and forth so I can keep this plane flat and also try to manage any twist that's getting introduced. Getting closer. I'm about 90 thousandths off, which sounds like a lot, but it really isn't. By the time I get this section here straightened out, because it's got a little bit of a bow in it on a smaller anvil, and get some things normalized, get the twist out of there, that just those things will probably account for a good 20-30 thousandths of length. So this can go pretty fast, but it takes some practice to get it right. And I'm going to be doing a lot of filing and sanding to get this to final finish shape. But this is, compared to the C key, this is really chunky. So I've got a lot of room to work with material-wise here. But yeah, try it out. Take a piece of brass or a piece of copper or a piece of silver and just beat on it and see what happens. And one last thing, if you have solder joints, don't hit the solder joints.